As the ongoing conflict in Ukraine continues to unfold, recent developments have led to heightened scrutiny of international diplomacy and military strategies in the region. The return of former President Donald Trump to the White House has stirred expectations around a potential resolution to the Russo-Ukrainian war, yet his early tenure has not produced the desired outcomes. With Trump asserting his intention to swiftly end Russian aggression, the reality on the ground remains fraught with complexities and challenges that defy simple solutions. In the first 4 months of Trump's new administration, hopes for an expedited peace have been met with a series of disappointments and unexpected policy shifts. Observers have noted a marked change in U.S. foreign policy, particularly regarding its commitment to allies and trade relationships. This shift raises concerns about the fragile geopolitical landscape. As Trump's overtures toward Russian President Vladimir Putin underscore a deepening entanglement that might threaten democratic norms and human rights across Europe. Negotiations between Russia and Ukraine have stagnated as both sides maintain entrenched positions. Russia's demands for demilitarization and a denazification process, an ambiguous term often interpreted as a push for greater Russian influence in Ukrainian politics, represent fundamentally unacceptable conditions for Ukraine. The lack of common ground in negotiations casts doubt on the feasibility of a peaceful resolution anytime soon, as even proposals for a temporary ceasefire have been rebuffed by Moscow. Despite 3 years of war, Putin's ambitions have not materialized as he had hoped. Ukrainian forces have shown remarkable resilience, repelling Russian advances and maintaining a unified front. Despite ongoing assaults and the severe toll on both military and civilian populations. Recent reports suggest that Russian military operations have failed to secure key objectives, and losses continue to mount, with estimates indicating Russian forces have suffered over 177,000 casualties since the beginning of 2025. Such attrition raises questions about Russia's ability to sustain prolonged military engagements, especially as it relies increasingly on less trained troops and outdated equipment. In parallel, the Kremlin has ramped up its rhetoric and military actions, launching record-breaking drone and missile strikes against Ukraine. The latest assault included 355 drones and missiles targeting Ukrainian cities, resulting in significant civilian casualties and destruction. This spike in aggression appears to be part of a broader strategy to demoralize Ukrainian forces and weaken Western resolve in supporting Ukraine. The recent statements from Russian officials, including threats to occupy vast swaths of Ukrainian territory, further illustrate the Kremlin's unwillingness to de-escalate tensions. In this volatile context, Western leaders are emphasizing the need for a unified response to Russia's aggression. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz has declared that there are no longer restrictions on the range of weapons supplied to Ukraine, marking a decisive shift in military support. This change enables Ukraine to target military infrastructure within Russia, potentially altering the dynamics of the conflict. However, the intensification of military support comes amid calls for Trump to translate his criticisms of Putin into concrete action, with various Western leaders urging for increased sanctions and a more robust military response. As the situation unfolds, analysts are exploring potential scenarios. The base scenario envisions a gradual decline in Russian military capabilities, potentially leading to a ceasefire agreement by the end of 2025. Conversely, a failure to halt hostilities could accelerate Russia's path to defeat, especially if Western nations bolster Ukraine's military capabilities significantly. The prospect of a changed strategic landscape remains uncertain, and there is an urgent need for European nations to prepare their armed forces for modern warfare, adapting to the rapid technological advancements that have characterized the current conflict. The evolving nature of warfare, with its reliance on high-tech systems and drone capabilities, presents new challenges not only for Russia but also for Ukrainian and European defenses. The lessons learned from Ukraine's resilience against Russian advances highlight the need for a coordinated response that includes investment in military innovation and direct engagement with the public to foster support for defense efforts. As the geopolitical chess game continues, the future of Ukraine hangs in the balance. The hope for peace remains overshadowed by the stark realities of war. And it is clear that any resolution will require a delicate balance between military strength, diplomatic engagement, and a commitment to uphold democratic values in the face of tyranny. The coming months will be crucial in determining the trajectory of not just Ukraine but the broader European security landscape as well. In a dramatic escalation of hostilities, Russia has unleashed its largest drone attack on Ukraine to date, resulting in the tragic deaths of at least 13 people, including young children. The assault, which occurred overnight from Sunday to Monday, saw Russia deploy a staggering 355 Shahid-type drones and 9 cruise missiles, marking a significant intensification of its military operations against Ukraine. This unprecedented barrage coincided with a historic prisoner exchange between the two nations, exchanging 1,000 individuals, captured soldiers and civilians, from each side. A rare moment of diplomatic engagement amid ongoing violence. Ukrainian emergency services described the atmosphere during the attacks as one of terror, particularly following the 2 consecutive nights of heavy bombardment that included strikes on the capital city of Kyiv. Ukraine's Air Force reported successfully intercepting a significant number of the incoming drones, with 266 drones and all 9 missiles shot down during this latest assault. However, the sheer volume of the attacks has raised alarms about the capabilities of Ukraine's air defense systems, which are increasingly being tested as Russia employs a strategy of saturation to overwhelm defenses. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky condemned the attacks, asserting that without strong international pressure on Russia, such brutality would persist. The silence of America and others around the world only encourages Putin, he lamented, calling for increased sanctions to deter further aggression. His sentiments were echoed by European leaders, including German Foreign Minister Johann Wadefuhl, who criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin's refusal to pursue peace, stating that further sanctions would be necessary. In a rare rebuke of Putin, U.S. President Donald Trump expressed discontent with the Russian leader's actions, describing him as crazy and indicating a willingness to consider escalating sanctions against Moscow. Trump's comments come amidst his ongoing attempts to broker peace in the conflict, though his efforts have yielded little substantive change in the situation on the ground. While the drone strikes have caused widespread devastation, including casualties in regions such as Zhytomyr and Khmelnytsky, the prisoner exchange has provided a poignant counterpoint to the violence. Victims of the conflict, such as soldiers returning from captivity, shared emotional reunions with families after enduring years of hardship. This exchange, the largest of its kind since the war began in February 2022, has been met with mixed emotions in Ukraine, with some expressing frustration over the absence of certain high-profile prisoners, particularly members of the Azov regiment. As the conflict continues unabated, Western allies have signaled a shift in their military support for Ukraine. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz announced that there are no longer any restrictions on the range of weapons supplied to Ukraine, allowing the country to target military positions within Russia, a development that could further escalate tensions. This decision follows a pattern of increasing military aid to Ukraine, including the recent delivery of F-16 fighter jets from the Netherlands aimed at bolstering Ukraine's air defense capabilities. The ongoing war, which has resulted in tens of thousands of casualties and widespread destruction, has prompted renewed discussions about potential pathways to peace. Despite Russia's obdurate military strategy, including recent incursions into Ukrainian territory, there are indications that diplomatic channels remain open, albeit fraught with challenges. As both sides navigate this complex landscape, the balance between military actions and diplomatic negotiations will be crucial in determining the conflict's trajectory. Looking ahead, the potential for further escalations looms large as both sides prepare for what could be a long and grueling continuation of hostilities. With international actors increasingly vocal about their positions, the conflict's future will depend not only on military developments but also on the effectiveness of diplomatic negotiations and the international community's response to ongoing aggression. In a dramatic escalation of rhetoric surrounding the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, former U.S. President Donald Trump referred to Russian President Vladimir Putin as absolutely crazy. This remark has drawn attention not just for its provocative nature but also for the Kremlin's subsequent response. which highlighted a perceived emotional overload in international discourse. As tensions continue to heighten, the interplay of political statements and military actions underscores the fragility of the situation in Eastern Europe. The remarks from Trump were made against the backdrop of intensified Russian aerial assaults on Ukraine, which have ramped up significantly in recent days. Reports indicate that Russia has been unleashing a record number of drones and missiles, with a notable strike occurring on May 26 when it launched 9 missiles and 355 drones. Ukrainian air defense forces claim to have intercepted most of these threats. However, skepticism remains regarding their effectiveness, particularly in light of upgraded Russian technology. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Ihnat noted that the latest Shahed drones are now faster and more sophisticated, complicating Ukraine's defensive efforts. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov responded to Trump's comments by stating there is some emotional overload, suggesting that the former president's remarks reflect a broader emotional response rather than a reasoned critique of Russian actions. This statement indicates the Kremlin's attempt to downplay the impact of external criticism while reinforcing its narrative of justified military actions in Ukraine. Peskov's comments come amid ongoing military operations that have seen an uptick in aggression, raising alarms not only in Ukraine but across Europe and the United States. The situation is further complicated by the international community's response to the conflict. As Ukraine grapples with shortages in advanced air defense systems, the need for support from allies becomes increasingly urgent. The U.S. and its partners face the challenging task of balancing military aid with diplomatic strategies aimed at de-escalation. This latest exchange highlights a broader trend of heightened emotions and rhetoric in international relations, which can often cloud judgment and lead to miscalculations. As the war in Ukraine enters a critical phase, the implications of such statements could reverberate not only through military strategy but also in the realm of public opinion and diplomatic relations. Looking forward, the potential for further escalation remains high. As both military and political dynamics evolve, the world watches closely to see how these developments will shape the future of Ukraine and its international alliances. With ongoing debates about military aid and diplomatic engagement, the next steps taken by global leaders could be pivotal in determining the trajectory of this conflict. In a politically charged atmosphere, recent comments from former President Donald Trump regarding the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict have ignited controversy and criticism, particularly from within his own party. During a press gaggle on Sunday, Trump condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin's aggressive actions, stating he does not like them and describing Putin as having gone absolutely crazy. However, Trump drew sharp rebuke for his subsequent remarks directed at Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, claiming, "Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it and it better stop." Representative Don Bacon, a Republican from Nebraska, was quick to respond to Trump's statements, labeling them as dumb and misguided. In a candid statement to Fox News, he noted, "The first half of this message is perfect, the rest is dumb." Trump is attacking President Zelensky while Putin bombs Ukrainian cities, and it is misguided. Bacon, a staunch advocate for Ukraine, emphasized the importance of clarity and moral positioning during wartime, asserting that Trump's comments undermine his credibility and play into Putin's hands. Bacon's comments align with a growing sentiment among U.S. lawmakers, who argue that the West must take a stronger stance against Russia. He called for arming Ukraine to the teeth, imposing maximum sanctions on Russia, and seizing Russian assets abroad. His assertion reflects a broader frustration with the current state of U.S. foreign policy, especially as the conflict continues to escalate with Russia's recent large-scale attacks on Ukrainian cities. In a sobering update, Zelensky reported that Russia launched its most extensive aerial assault since the onset of the war, deploying 355 attack drones and 9 cruise missiles, which resulted in civilian casualties and significant damage to infrastructure. In response, Zelensky has urged the international community to respond with increased sanctions, stating, "The silence of America, the silence of others in the world only encourages Putin." His comments highlight the urgent need for a unified global response to Russia's aggression. International voices echoed this sentiment. with German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul noting the necessity of additional sanctions, asserting that Putin is not interested in peace. The European Union's top diplomat Kaja Kallas also called for stronger international pressure on Russia, emphasizing the humanitarian impact of the ongoing conflict, particularly on innocent civilians. As the geopolitical landscape shifts, the situation remains dire for Ukraine. The recent attacks come on the heels of a significant prisoner swap where both Russia and Ukraine exchanged 1,000 captured soldiers and civilians, marking a rare moment of cooperation amid the turmoil. Furthermore, the Netherlands is set to deliver the final F-16 fighter jet from a promised batch, bolstering Ukraine's defense capabilities in the face of relentless aggression. The conflicting messages from Trump and the bipartisan push for a more robust U.S. response illustrate the complexity of American political discourse surrounding foreign policy. As the war continues to unfold, the implications of leadership statements and international alliances will be critical in shaping the future of not only Ukraine but the broader European security landscape. With the potential for further escalations, the call for unity and clear moral direction remains paramount as the world watches the developments in this ongoing conflict.